And this shows you a lot of the areas of old channels going through here. And lo and behold, that's where a lot of the wetlands occurred too, where you had these old channels when we looked at it. So if you look, that's what it looks like in a little bit different format. You can see in that blue, that's what we're considering the wetland areas. So all of this blue highlighted area is wetland, fringe wetlands, and those coincided pretty well with what the historical channels look like throughout that reservoir area. So that's the wetlands. And one of the things that when you talk about impacts to wetlands, there's kind of direct impacts and there's indirect. Direct would be if you were driving your bulldozer through the middle of the wetlands. That's a direct impact. An indirect impact is if you go in and build a dike around the wetland and it can't get water or anything else, then that would be an indirect because you didn't go in and disturb them, but you disturbed the area around them. And so we're not disturbing very many wetlands at all directly. Very little direct impacts. We're not going to be doing anything in these areas in the blue, like all of this area here. We're not doing anything out there. So there's no direct impacts for the majority of these wetlands. There's a little bit here where we would be crossing if we actually remove the dam, and a little bit on this side, but very small amounts that would be impacted as a result of direct impact. But when you look at indirect impacts, so when you actually lower the water surface down, then you can have an indirect impact. I'm sorry, we're not taking questions at this point. That's fine, we're not taking questions at this point.
Let him give his presentation. Sit down. Sit down.
That map is right back there on the wall, and you'll have a chance to comment on that very map right back there. And so this is the whole purpose of this process, is to give comments. And we have a map, that exact map right back there, and a written form that you can completely write your comments on. So.
Anybody's going to read it.
It's actually showing
that exact map.
Right back there.
You can have time to comment.
But I'm saying that our origin is there, and it is wetland, and it's not showing wetland.
So as a result of lowering the water surface, if the dam were removed, then there are indirect impacts, obviously. As you lower the water surface, areas in this wetland up here that are currently wetlands, classified as wetlands, will have impacts as far as that water table coming down. However, it's very difficult to get the exact impacts to that because with the water table up so high as a result of this dam, we don't know how much exactly this area is being fed from water coming off of Table Rock to store in these areas up here. So we will have likely water seeping in here. The other thing too that we look at is how this, if the dam were taken out, this isn't going to change up in this area up here. We would still have the river at this elevation. So water would still come down this north channel, is what it's referred to, or Upper Kelly Slough in here. So you still have groundwater and surface water that would make it down into this area and continue to feed this area as well. So it's not going to necessarily turn into a big wasteland. It would stay green. One of the questions that is difficult to answer is how much of it would stay a wetland. And so there will be some indirect impacts for sure. However, on the contrary, there's going to be a lot of areas that are not wetlands right now that would be exposed. You have areas in here that are not wetlands, and when that water table is drawn down, we start to get the fringe wetlands start to move in. And so you start to develop these types of wetlands like you see here at Bear Creek, where you have these marginal wetlands along the edge, along here, some of these fringe wetlands like that. So as a result of lowering the reservoir, we're going to expose a lot more area that has the potential to create wetlands. So the next thing that I want to talk about, again, we have a great opportunity for people to give comments, and this is a transparent process. We're not trying to hide anything. People have a great opportunity to give comments tonight. And so that's what the written format is for people to give comments. So I'm going to move on, and that's the wetland study that we talked about there. We're going to talk about the hydraulic and sediment modeling. And so this was obviously a pretty big question, is what's going to happen to the sediment, what's going to happen with flooding, in other issues like that, and that we wanted to try and make sure that we had good answers to as far as be able to predict what would happen. This here is a hydraulic model that was put together. You can see we looked at, from a hydraulic modeling standpoint, we looked at, this is Gold Nugget Rapids right here, and then we continued all the way with the hydraulic model past, here's Gold Ray, and then this is past upstream of the influence of the dam. So it goes all the way from Upper Kelly Slough all the way down to Gold Nugget Rapids. You can see a couple miles worth of hydraulic modeling effort that went into that. I talked a lot about the data collection effort that we did last time and how we were able to obtain all this data. So that information was put into this model here so that we actually have cross-sections throughout the entire valley there so that we can see what's going on from a hydraulic standpoint. Once we do that and start to generate different scenarios, this is kind of an interesting scenario right here. So to help you kind of visualize this, this is the upstream end of the model here, so obviously higher, and then this is Gold Nugget Rapids, the lower part. And so this next image that I'm going to show you is just a stream bed profile. If you were to take the dam out, what would happen? So that red dot right there in the middle, this is where Gold Ray Dam, if you were to take it out, this is what the stream bed would look like after it's out. Then this here is like a 2-year storm event, and then the top profile up here is like a 100-year storm event. So if we had a 100-year event, the thing that I wanted you to capture from this image is the valley really starts to constrict. And that's why they build dams in those areas where valleys really constrict and there's a lot of bedrock. That's where they like to put dams. And that's the case that we have here. And so even without the dam in place, this location where the dam used to be still acts as a constriction. You can see the slope of the water. This is a 100-year event. And then you can see it flattens out almost like there was a dam right there. And it's a constriction in the valley. And so you see water backing up under a 100-year event. That's why they built a dam there. So then we have cross-sections as well. And so throughout the model, you have cross-sections that help you predict what the velocities would be like and how high the water surface would go. One of the important things to understand is if a 100-year event or a large storm event comes through, what's going to happen with the water surface? Are we going to change it by several feet, or are we going to leave it the same, or are we going to lower it? Obviously, in the reservoir upstream of where the dam, if the dam came out, it's going to lower the water surface for a 100-year event. Downstream, we're not seeing any impacts to the 100-year water surface. And I'm going to try and explain why that is, or why the case is you wouldn't see any impacts. This here is further downstream. This is down by Gold Ray Estates where we talked about having there's a little pond there you saw on the front page of the paper. That's a cross-section where that pond is at. This is a 100-year water surface. You can see that it's just at the surface where the pond is on the right-hand side of that cross-section. So, some caveats, or just some kind of to be transparent with you and frank with you, is that sediment modeling is a highly variable process. I mean, it's not an exact science. You know, you don't get an exact answer down to 6 inches or 2 inches. You get variability in the modeling. It's very responsive to the inputs. What modeling does do for us is that it gives us the trends and kind of the trajectories of where the river is going as a result of this sediment moving and of floods, big events. It's the best we can do with the tools that are available. That's the bottom line. And then what we have to do is we take the hydraulic modeling, and if any good practitioner understands a model is only as good as the model, you have to take practical experience and understanding of river processes and how rivers behave, and you put the two together to come up with your final answer, so to speak. And that's where, you know, the experience comes in, obviously, into pretty big play.